The alarm screamed through every corridor of Valor Station. Captain Han Tae-sung stood in the command center, watching 3 massive warships appear on the scanner. They were Kralith vessels, each one twice the size of the entire human outpost. Behind him, 42 Marines rushed to their battle stations. Tae-sung was 42 years old and had fought in 7 wars. His face carried scars from battles that would have killed weaker men. He stood perfectly still, his dark eyes studying the enemy ships. Around him, younger Marines checked their weapons with shaking hands. They had every right to be afraid. Sergeant Choi Hana entered the command center, her boots loud on the metal floor. She was 28 and known throughout the fleet for her skill with explosives. "Captain, the outer corridors are rigged," she reported. "If they board us, they'll pay for every meter." Tae-sung nodded. Hana was reliable. She never panicked, never questioned orders. She simply did her job with deadly efficiency. The communications console beeped. Corporal Park Mina looked up from her station. "Captain, incoming transmission." "They want to talk." "Put it on screen," Tae-sung said. The main view screen flickered to life. A massive alien face appeared, filling the display. The Kralith were a warrior race built like walking tanks. This one wore armor decorated with trophies from conquered worlds. Bones, teeth, and metals from dozens of species hung from chains across his chest. "I am Warmaster Kalvex of the Kralith Empire." The alien's voice boomed through the speakers. "You occupy a station in territory we claim. You will surrender immediately." Tae-sung crossed his arms. Several Marines in the command center held their breath, waiting for their captain's response. "Surrender?" Tae-sung asked. His voice was calm, almost casual. "Surrender to who?" The alien Warmaster's eyes narrowed in confusion. "To the Kralith Empire, to me. Are you damaged in your thinking, human? Look at your scanners. I have 3 warships. I have 2,100 warriors. You have 1 small station and a handful of soldiers." Tae-sung smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. "I don't see anyone worth surrendering to. Just some aliens who don't know what they're getting into." Silence filled the communication channel. The Kralith Warmaster stared at the human captain as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "You have 1 of your solar hours to surrender," Kalvex said slowly. "After that, we will board your station and kill every human we find. Your choice is simple. Live as prisoners or die as fools." Tae-sung reached forward and cut the transmission. The view screen went dark. For a moment, nobody in the command center spoke. Then Private Yoon-dae, the youngest Marine on the station, broke the silence. "Captain, did you just refuse to surrender to an army 50 times our size?" Tae-sung turned to face his Marines. Dae was 22 years old, fresh from training. This was his first real deployment. The boy looked terrified. "Listen carefully," Tae-sung said. His voice carried through the command center, reaching every Marine present. "We're not here to win. We're here to teach. Those aliens think numbers matter. They think because they have more warriors, more ships, more guns that we'll just give up." He walked slowly past his Marines, making eye contact with each one. "They've conquered dozens of species. You know why? Because those other species did the math. They calculated the odds and decided surrender was logical." Lieutenant Kang Junho, the tactical officer, spoke up. "And we're not going to be logical? We're going to be human," Tae-sung said. "We're going to show them what that means. Every species they've conquered before knew when to quit. Humans don't quit. We don't surrender because we never learned how." Sergeant Hana checked her rifle. "How long do you think we can hold them?" "Long enough," Tae-sung said. "Long enough to make them regret coming here. Long enough to send a message to every alien empire in the galaxy. Long enough to teach them that humans aren't prey." He pulled up a tactical map of the station. "Hana, you're in charge of the outer defense. Use every trap you've prepared. Make them bleed for every corridor. Shunyo, coordinate our fire teams. Keep them moving. Never let the enemy predict where we'll strike next. Mina," he continued, "I need you on communications. Monitor their frequencies. Learn their patterns. And Dae, you're our medic. Keep our people fighting. Patch them up and send them back to the line." Young Dae swallowed hard. "Captain, I'm trained to save lives, not—" "You'll save lives by keeping Marines in the fight," Tae-sung interrupted. "Every minute we hold this station is another minute for the fleet to respond. Every alien we kill is one less attacking human colonies. You want to save lives? This is how." The hour passed quickly. Marines took positions throughout the station. Hana moved through the outer corridors, arming her explosive traps. She had spent weeks preparing these defenses, turning ordinary hallways into death zones. The Kralith wouldn't know what hit them. Private Nam Su, a heavy weapons specialist, set up his cannon at the main corridor intersection. He was 24 and rarely spoke. But when he did fire his weapon, he never missed. "Ready?" he reported over the communication channel. In the medical bay, Day organized his supplies: bandages, emergency medical gel, pain suppressors, and combat stimulants. He knew he'd need all of it before this was over. The command center's scanner showed movement. Small pods were launching from the Kralith warships, dozens of them, heading straight for Valor Station. "Boarding pods incoming," Mina reported. "They're hitting us on all sides. Estimate 300 warriors in the first wave." Taesung watched the scanner calmly. 300 aliens against 43 humans. The math was terrible. Good. "All units, this is Captain Taesung." He spoke into the station-wide channel. "Enemy boarding in 30 seconds. Remember your training. Remember who you are. We are human Marines. We don't retreat. We don't surrender. We fight." The first boarding pod slammed into the station's outer hull. Metal screamed as the pods cut through armor plating. Airlock doors exploded inward. Kralith warriors poured into the corridors, their weapons ready, their armor gleaming. They expected frightened defenders. They expected retreat and chaos. Instead, they walked into Sergeant Hana's traps. The first explosion tore through a squad of 12 warriors. The second explosion collapsed an entire corridor, crushing another squad under tons of debris. The third, fourth, and fifth explosions turned the outer ring of the station into a war zone. Kralith warriors stumbled through smoke and fire, trying to find their enemy. Human Marines fired from hidden positions, killing aliens and then disappearing before return fire could reach them. It was chaos, but it was controlled chaos. Planned chaos. In the command center, Taesung listened to combat reports. Northeast sector, 15 enemy down. Southwest sector, 20 enemy down. South corridor, Hana reports successful detonation of Trap 7. Private Nam Su's heavy cannon roared to life. The sound echoed through the entire station. Kralith warriors fell in rows, cut down by sustained fire. When they tried to charge his position, Su simply kept firing, his face showing no emotion. On the Kralith flagship, War Master Kalvex received his first casualty reports. 60 warriors dead in the first 10 minutes. For a brief moment, doubt crossed his mind. Then he crushed that doubt. These were just humans. Weak, soft humans. "Send another wave," he ordered. "Show them what happens when they refuse surrender." Back on Valor Station, Captain Taesung smiled. The enemy was doing exactly what he expected. They were angry now, pushing harder, thinking violence would break the human defense. They didn't understand yet. Violence was where humans excelled. "All units," Taesung said calmly. "First wave is broken. Prepare for the second. Remember, we're not trying to stop them. We're trying to make them afraid." The battle for Valor Station had begun, and the Kralith Empire was about to learn a hard lesson. 3 hours into the battle, War Master Kalvex stared at casualty reports he couldn't believe. 312 warriors dead. Another 80 wounded badly enough to be pulled from combat, against 43 humans. "This cannot be correct," he said to his second-in-command, Vixtel. "Check the numbers again." Vixtel, a veteran of 30 campaigns, looked uncomfortable. "The numbers are correct, War Master. The humans are not fighting like any species we've encountered before." On the view screen, combat footage played. A human female stood in a narrow corridor, firing her weapon with mechanical precision. Kralith warriors charged her position. She didn't retreat. She didn't even seem afraid. She killed 6 warriors before finally taking a hit. Even wounded, she kept fighting, taking down 3 more before she fell. "Replay that section," Kalvex demanded. The footage showed the moment again. The human was clearly hit, blood spreading across her uniform. But she didn't fall immediately. She kept firing. She kept killing. Only when her weapon ran empty did she collapse. "Why didn't she retreat?" Kalvex asked. "She could have fallen back to a secondary position. That's basic tactics." "Humans don't seem to believe in retreat," Vixtel said quietly. On Valor Station, Sergeant Hana dragged herself through a maintenance tunnel. She'd been hit twice, but both wounds were manageable. Her explosive traps were doing their job perfectly. The Kralith kept walking into them because they couldn't imagine defenders who stayed in place to die. She reached the junction point for sectors 3 and 4. Another squad of aliens was approaching. Hana armed her remaining charges and waited. Pain didn't matter. Fear didn't matter. Only the mission mattered. The Kralith entered the corridor. Hana triggered the explosives. The blast wave threw her backward into the tunnel. But she heard the screams of dying aliens. Good enough. In the medical bay, Private Yoon Dai worked frantically on a wounded Marine. It was Private Kim Jisoo, a woman from Dai's training unit. She'd been hit by plasma fire that burned through her armor. Am I going to die? Jisoo asked, her voice tight with pain. Dai injected emergency medical gel directly into the wound. Not today. I need you back on the line in 10 minutes. 10 minutes? Jisoo laughed, then coughed. You're crazy. We're all crazy, Dai said, applying synthetic skin over the burn. That's why we're winning. He wasn't wrong. 3.5 hours of combat had killed 17 Kralith warriors for every human casualty. The station was holding because the defenders refused to act like defenders. They acted like attackers who happened to be surrounded. Lieutenant Kang Junho coordinated the defense from his tactical station. He was 31 and had studied military history his entire life. He'd read about ancient human battles where tiny forces held against huge armies. Thermopylae, the Alamo, Rorke's Drift. Now he was living that history. Fire Team 3, fall back to Checkpoint 7, he ordered. Fire Team 1 advanced to their last position. Keep them confused about where we actually are. The strategy was working. The Kralith expected a defensive perimeter that would slowly collapse. Instead, they faced humans who were everywhere and nowhere. Attack patterns that made no logical sense. Defenders who became attackers at random moments. Corporal Park Mina worked at her communications station, listening to Kralith battle chatter. She'd cracked their encryption in the first hour. Now she listened to their growing panic. Unit 7 reports heavy casualties, a Kralith voice said. Unit 12 is requesting immediate support. Unit 3 has lost contact with command. Another voice, this one higher ranked, responded. How many humans in your sector? We don't know. They appear, kill warriors, and disappear. We can't get a count, Mina smiled. The enemy couldn't count their defenders because the humans kept moving. Captain Taesung's strategy was brilliant in its simplicity. Make the enemy think you have more troops than you do. Captain Taesung himself moved through the station, checking positions. He found Private Nam Su at his heavy cannon, the weapon still firing in controlled bursts. Dead Kralith warriors were piled in front of the position. How's your ammunition? Taesung asked. 40% remaining, Su reported without looking away from his weapon. I'm being efficient. Good man. They'll try to rush you soon. When they do, fall back to secondary position. No need, Su said calmly. I can hold here. Taesung put a hand on the young man's shoulder. I know you can, but I need you alive to hold the next position. Understand? Su finally looked at his captain. Yes, sir. On the Kralith flagship, War Master Kelvex received a communication from the second boarding wave. Sir, we've secured the outer ring of the station. Casualties? Kelvex asked, dreading the answer. 238 dead, sir. 94 wounded. Kelvex felt something he'd never experienced in combat before. Doubt. His warriors had taken the outer ring of a small station and lost over 300 soldiers doing it. How many would it cost to take the rest? The humans are fighting irrationally, his tactical officer reported. They defend positions until killed. They don't retreat even when flanked. They fight wounded. One human female continued combat with 3 separate injuries until she triggered explosives that killed herself and 12 of our warriors. Suicide attacks? Kelvex asked. Not exactly. She was trying to hold a position. When she couldn't anymore, she made sure we paid for taking it. Kelvex pulled up combat footage again. This time he watched a human male, young and clearly injured, treating wounded humans while firing his weapon. The human would patch a wound, send the Marine back to fight, then return fire at Kralith warriors. He was a medic and a soldier at the same time. These humans don't separate their roles, Kelvex observed. Every single one is a warrior, Vixtel nodded. Their medic has killed 9 of our warriors. Their communication officer killed 6 before she died. They don't have non-combatants. Back on the station, the battle continued. Sergeant Hana set her final trap in the central corridor. She was bleeding from multiple wounds now, leaving a trail of blood behind her. But the trap was more important than her life. That was a calculation she'd made easily. The trap was beautiful in its simplicity. When the Kralith pushed through to the inner ring, they'd trigger pressure plates that would ignite fuel lines throughout 3 entire sections. The explosion would kill dozens of aliens and make the inner station nearly impossible to access. Hana finished her work and leaned against the wall. She'd done her job. If she died here, that was fine. The trap would kill more aliens than she ever could with her rifle. Corporal Park Mina intercepted another Kralith communication. This one was from War Master Calvex himself talking to someone off-ship. These humans fight like demons. Every position costs us dozens of warriors. At this rate, we'll lose 1,000 soldiers taking one small station. The other voice responded, "Then perhaps you should withdraw, War Master." "The Kralith Empire does not withdraw," Calvex said firmly. "We will take this station. But the cost is higher than any battle I've fought." Mina recorded the conversation and sent it to Captain Tae Sung. The captain listened, then smiled. "They're starting to understand. Good. Let's teach them more." Private Yunde finished treating another wounded Marine. This one was Corporal Bay Taman, hit by shrapnel from a grenade. "You're good to go," Day said. "Thanks, Doc." Taman grabbed his rifle and headed back to his position. Day looked at his hands. They were covered in blood. Not just Taman's blood, but the blood of a dozen Marines he'd treated in the past few hours. Some had gone back to fight. Some had died despite his efforts. But he kept working because that's what humans did. He thought about Captain Taesung's words. "We're not here to win. We're here to teach." Dee was beginning to understand what that meant. Every alien they killed, every position they held, every minute they survived, taught the Kralith that humans were different. Humans didn't surrender. 4 hours into the battle, the Kralith controlled the outer third of Valor Station. It had cost them 537 warriors. The humans had lost 9 Marines. The ratio should have been impossible. But it wasn't, because the Kralith were fighting to conquer. The humans were fighting to survive. And survival was something humans had spent millions of years perfecting. 20 hours into the siege, Captain Han Tai-sung stood in what remained of the command center. Half the equipment was destroyed. Emergency lighting cast everything in red. 27 Marines were still alive. Outside, over 1,000 Kralith warriors pushed deeper into the station. Lieutenant Kang Junho studied his tactical display. "They're bringing fresh troops from the second ship. At least 500 more warriors. Captain, we can't hold much longer." "We don't need to hold," Tae-sung said calmly. "We just need to make them pay." Sergeant Choi Hana limped into the command center. Her left arm was bandaged and blood stained her uniform. Central corridor traps are set. When they push through, it's going to be spectacular. Tae-sung nodded. Hana had been wounded 3 times but refused to stay in the medical bay. Like every Marine on the station, she'd fight until she couldn't anymore. On the Kralith flagship, War Master Calvex met with his officers. The casualty report was devastating. 947 warriors dead, 211 too wounded to continue fighting, all to capture 2/3 of a small human station. Second Commander Vixtel spoke carefully. "War Master, perhaps we should reconsider our approach. These humans are not like other species. Each one fights like 10 normal soldiers." "Are you suggesting we withdraw?" Calvex asked dangerously. "I'm suggesting we understand what we're fighting," Vixtel said. "I've studied the combat recordings. The humans don't retreat even when it's tactically smart. They don't surrender even when they're surrounded. They fight wounded. They fight outnumbered. They fight knowing they'll die. This isn't normal behavior." An observer named Elder Tralvox stepped forward. He was older than the other Kralith, his armor plain compared to their decorated war gear. "May I speak, War Master?" Calvex gestured for him to continue. Tralvox was from the High Command, sent to evaluate humanity's military capability. His opinion mattered. "I've been studying these humans for weeks," Tralvox said. "Before this battle, I reviewed their history. Do you know what I found? Humans evolved as prey animals. They weren't the strongest, fastest, or most dangerous creatures on their world. They survived through 2 traits, endurance and refusal to quit." He pulled up images on the display. Humans can run for days without stopping. They can survive injuries that would kill most species. But more importantly, they have something we don't. They call it stubbornness. It means they'd rather die than give up. Calvex stared at the images. "You're saying they're fighting this way because of biology?" "I'm saying they're fighting this way because it's what humans do," Tralvox replied. "Every species we've conquered understood when they were beaten. Humans don't. You can kill them, but you cannot make them surrender." Back on Valor Station, Private Yoon Dai worked in the remains of the medical bay. Another wounded Marine lay on the table. It was Private Namsu, the heavy weapons specialist. His leg was badly injured from a grenade blast. How bad? Sue asked calmly. Bad enough that you should stay here and rest, Day said, injecting pain suppressors. That's not what I asked. Sue sat up despite Day's protests. Can I still fire my weapon? Day wanted to say no. He wanted to order Sue to rest. But he knew it wouldn't matter. Yes, you can still fight. Then patch me up. I'm needed on the line. Day worked in silence, applying emergency medical gel and synthetic skin. He'd learned something over the past 20 hours. He wasn't trying to save lives anymore. He was keeping Marines functional long enough to complete the mission. It was a dark realization, but it was the truth. Corporal Park Mina had moved her communication station to a protected corner. She still monitored Kralith frequencies, but now she was doing something else. She was recording everything. Every battle, every conversation, every tactical decision. If the station fell, this data needed to survive. Captain, she called out. Kralith High Command is talking to Kalvex. They're questioning his decision to continue the assault. Tae-sung walked over. Can you send me the recording? Mina played it back. An elderly Kralith voice spoke. Warmaster, your casualty ratio is unacceptable. You've lost nearly half your force taking a station with fewer than 50 defenders. Kalvex responded angrily. These humans fight like nothing we've seen before. But we will take this station. The Empire does not retreat. Pride is expensive, the elder said. Make sure this victory is worth the cost. Tae-sung smiled. They're starting to question themselves. Good. Mina, I need you to do something for me. Anything, Captain. Take all your recordings and send them on a tight beam transmission to Fleet Command. Everything we've done here needs to be remembered. Mina nodded and began preparing the data package. She worked quickly, knowing time was running out. In the central corridor, Sergeant Hana waited beside her final trap. Kralith warriors were approaching, dozens of them pushing toward the command center. She could hear their heavy footsteps echoing through the metal halls. She checked her rifle. Half a magazine left. Not enough to stop an army, but enough to make them remember her. She thought about her family back on Earth. Her mother would be proud. Hana had done her duty. The first Kralith warrior appeared around the corner. Hana fired, dropping him instantly. More warriors charged forward, firing their weapons. Plasma bolts struck the walls around her. She kept firing, calm and focused. 3 warriors down, 4, 5. Her rifle clicked empty. The Kralith charged, thinking she was finished. Hana smiled and triggered the detonator. The explosion was massive. Fuel lines throughout 3 sections ignited simultaneously. The blast wave killed every Kralith in the corridor and collapsed the ceiling. 42 enemy warriors died in an instant, and Sergeant Choi Hana died with them, still smiling. In the command center, Tae-sung heard the explosion. He knew what it meant. Hana's trap just triggered. That'll slow them down. Lieutenant Junho checked his tactical display. We've lost contact with Sergeant Hana. Nobody said anything for a moment. They all knew she was dead, but there was no time for grief. The battle continued. Private Namsu limped to his heavy cannon position. His injured leg made every step painful. But pain was just sensation. It didn't matter. He set up his weapon and waited for targets. He didn't have to wait long. Kralith warriors, angry about the trap, charged through a side corridor. Sue opened fire, his cannon roaring. Warriors fell in rows. They tried to flank him, but he simply rotated the cannon and kept firing. 10 aliens dead. 15. 20. Return fire struck his position, but Sue didn't flinch.
He just kept shooting, his face expressionless.
This was his job. This was what he was trained for. A plasma bolt struck his shoulder. Sue grunted but didn't stop firing. Another bolt hit his side. Still, he kept shooting. The cannon's power cell was dying. Each shot weaker than the last. Finally, it clicked empty. Sue dropped the cannon and drew his combat knife. 3 Kralith warriors charged his position. They were larger, stronger, better armed. It didn't matter. Sue met them with cold determination. He killed the first one with a knife thrust to the throat. The second one he tackled, using his body weight to bring the alien down. They fought on the floor, struggling. Sue took several hits but managed to drive his knife between the alien's armor plates. The third warrior shot him. Sue felt the impact but finished off the second alien before turning to face the last one. He charged, knowing he was dead but refusing to go down without taking one more enemy with him. He reached the third warrior and drove his knife home. They fell together. dying on the blood-stained floor of Valor Station. Private Namsu's last thought was satisfaction. He'd done his job well. On the Kralith flagship, casualty reports kept coming. Over 1,100 warriors dead now. The cost was becoming impossible to ignore. Second Commander Vixtel spoke quietly to War Master Calvex. Sir, we estimate 300 more casualties to take the command center. We'll have fewer than 200 combat-effective warriors remaining. Then we'll take it with 200 warriors, Calvex said stubbornly. Elder Tralvox watched the exchange. He understood now what Captain Tae-sung had intended. The humans weren't trying to win. They were trying to teach. Every dead Kralith warrior was a lesson. Every hour of battle was a warning. Humanity couldn't be conquered because the cost would always be too high. Back in the command center, Captain Tae-sung gathered his remaining Marines. 12 people, all wounded, all exhausted, but none of them looked defeated. We've lost good people today, Tae-sung said. Hana, Sue, and 15 others. They died doing their duty. Now it's time for us to finish what they started. Private Yunde stood among the Marines, his medical supplies nearly gone. He'd transformed from a frightened medic into something harder. Something more dangerous. What's the plan, Captain? We make them regret every step they take toward this command center, Tae-sung said. We fight like humans. We show them what that means. The remaining Marines nodded. They were ready. Not because they expected to survive, but because survival wasn't the point anymore. The point was the lesson. 36 hours into the siege, Captain Han Tae-sung stood behind the last barricade. 12 Marines remained alive. The command center was the final defensive position. Beyond the reinforced doors, 800 Kralith warriors prepared for the last assault. The odds had never been good, but now they were impossible. 12 humans against 800 aliens. Tae-sung checked his rifle. 1 magazine left. It wouldn't be enough. Nothing would be enough. But that had never been the point. Lieutenant Kang Junho worked at the damaged tactical console. Captain, I'm reading massive power signatures in orbit. More ships just arrived. Kralith reinforcements? Tae-sung asked. Yunho studied the display, then smiled. Actually smiled. No, sir. Those are human ships. The fleet is here. For a moment, the command center was silent. Then Private Yunde laughed. It was an exhausted, slightly hysterical sound. The fleet came. We just had to hold long enough. The fleet isn't here to save us, Tae-sung said quietly. Look at the tactical plot. They're positioning to trap the Kralith ships, not land Marines. They're here to make sure the aliens don't escape. The truth settled over the remaining Marines. The fleet hadn't come to rescue them. It had come to finish what they'd started. Valor Station was always meant to be a trap. Corporal Park Mina had been working frantically at her communication station. Captain, I've transmitted all our combat data to the fleet. Everything we did here is recorded. Every tactic, every battle, every sacrifice. Good work, Mina, Tae-sung said. Now it's time to finish this. He activated the station-wide communication system. His voice would reach every corner of Valor Station, including the sections the Kralith controlled. War Master Calvex, this is Captain Tae-sung. I have something to tell you. On the Kralith flagship, Calvex was in his command center coordinating the final assault. When the human captain's voice came through the speakers, he gestured for silence. Your fleet is surrounded, Tae-sung said calmly. Human warships have you trapped. In approximately 6 minutes, I'm going to trigger the station's reactor to overload. This entire station will explode. You and all your warriors still aboard will die. That was always the plan. Calvex felt ice in his veins. You're bluffing. You wouldn't destroy your own station. War Master, you still don't understand humans, Tae-sung replied. We've been dying for 36 hours to keep you here. Why would we stop now? You wanted this station so badly you can have it. In pieces. Elder Tralvox, listening from his position, understood immediately. He's telling the truth. The humans never intended to hold the station. They intended to make it a grave. Second Commander Vixtel pulled up tactical data. The human fleet has us boxed in. If we try to withdraw, they'll destroy us. If we stay, the station will explode. Calvex stared at the display. How long to evacuate our warriors from the station? At least 12 minutes, sir. We don't have enough time. On Valor Station, the remaining Marines prepared for their last stand. They'd rigged the final corridor with every explosive they had left. When the Kralith came through those doors, they'd face a wall of fire. Private Yunde no longer looked like a medic. His uniform was torn and bloody. He carried a rifle in one hand and a combat knife in the other. Over the past 36 hours, he'd transformed from an idealistic boy into a hardened warrior. "Captain," Day said, "for what it's worth, I'm glad I was stationed here. I learned what it means to be human." Tai Sung nodded. "You did well, Day. Better than well. You're a Marine now, a real one." The doors to the command center shuddered under sustained fire. The Kralith were coming. This was it. Corporal Park Mina had one final task. She'd prepared a data packet containing every moment of the battle. Combat footage, casualty reports, tactical analysis, personal logs, everything. Now she transmitted it with a message. "This is what happens when you fight humans." The transmission went out on every frequency. Not just to the human fleet, but to every ship in the sector. The galaxy would know what happened here. "Transmission complete," Mina reported. "The story of Valor Station is out there now. We won't be forgotten." Lieutenant Junho checked his calculations one last time. "Reactor overload in 4 minutes. The explosion will destroy everything within 5 kilometers. The Kralith ships are well within that range." "Good," Taesung said. "That's good." The command center doors exploded inward. Kralith warriors poured through, dozens of them, roaring war cries. The humans opened fire. Every shot counted now. Every alien killed was one less that would attack human colonies. Taesung fired methodically, dropping warriors with precise shots. Beside him, the remaining Marines did the same. They fought like they'd done everything else on this station, with determination that refused to acknowledge defeat. Private Yunde shot a charging warrior, then another. His rifle clicked empty. Without hesitation, he drew his knife and charged forward. A Kralith warrior, massive and armored, met his charge. They collided hard. Day was smaller, weaker, disadvantaged in every physical way. But he was human. He fought with desperation and fury, driving his knife at any gap in the alien's armor. They struggled on the floor, neither willing to give up. The warrior struck Day hard across the face. Day felt bones break but didn't release his knife. He struck again, finding a gap between armor plates. The warrior screamed and weakened. Day struck again and again until the alien stopped moving. Lieutenant Junho fell, hit by plasma fire. He didn't get back up. Corporal Mina took a shot to the leg but kept firing from the floor. One by one the Marines fell, but they took aliens with them. Always they took aliens with them. Captain Taesung fought at the center of the chaos. His rifle was empty now. He fought with his knife using every trick he'd learned in 7 wars. A warrior struck him from the side. Taesung felt ribs crack but spun and drove his knife into the alien's throat. More warriors poured in. There were too many now, far too many. But Taesung kept fighting. Around him, his last Marines gave everything they had. Private Yunde, wounded and exhausted, fought beside his captain. The young medic who'd been afraid 36 hours ago was gone. In his place stood a Marine who'd learned what it meant to be human. On the Kralith flagship, War Master Calvex watched his tactical display with growing horror. 738 warriors were still on the station. The reactor would overload in 2 minutes. There was no time to evacuate them all. "Order full withdrawal," he said quietly. "Get everyone off that station now." "Sir, we can't save them all," Vixtel reported. "I know," Calvex said. "But save who we can." Elder Tralvox recorded everything. This moment would be studied by Kralith commanders for generations. This was the moment they learned that some species couldn't be conquered. Some species would rather die than surrender. In the command center, Captain Taesung stood alone. All his Marines were dead. The floor was covered in bodies, human and Kralith. He was wounded in a dozen places, bleeding heavily. But he was still standing. War Master Calvex's face appeared on a damaged screen. "Human Captain, why? Why do this? You could have surrendered. Your species could have lived." Taesung smiled through blood-stained teeth. "You asked us to surrender. But surrender isn't something humans do. We fight. That's what makes us human." "You're all gonna die," Calvex said. "Yes," Taesung agreed. "But we already won. Look at your fleet. Look at your casualties. You came here with over 2,000 warriors to take one small station. You'll leave with fewer than 300, and the galaxy is going to hear about it. Every species out there will know what it costs to fight humans." The reactor alarm blared through the station. 60 seconds to detonation. Taesung looked at the bodies of his Marines. Good people. Brave people. They'd done what they came to do. "You asked us to surrender," he said to Calvex. We taught you what surrender means to humanity. It means nothing. The screen went dark. Taesung closed his eyes. Around him, the station began to shake as the reactor reached critical mass. 30 seconds. He thought about Earth, about humanity spreading through the stars, about every Marine who'd ever served. They were all part of something bigger, something that couldn't be stopped by superior numbers or firepower. 20 seconds. Kralith warriors were fleeing the station now, running for their evacuation pods. Some would make it. Most wouldn't, that was fine. The survivors would carry the lesson back to their empire. 10 seconds. Captain Han Taesung smiled. He'd done his job. He'd taught the lesson. Humans don't surrender. 5 seconds. The reactor exploded. Valor Station became a second sun, a ball of fusion fire that expanded outward at the speed of light. The blast consumed everything. The station, the remaining Kralith warriors, and the last human Marines standing in the command center. But the explosion didn't end there. The wave struck the Kralith warships, their shields failing under the unexpected power. 2 ships were destroyed instantly. The third was badly damaged. Limping away from the blast zone, the human fleet watched in silence. Commander Lim Hyun, a veteran officer, recorded everything. All ships marked this location. Valor Station fell today, but it took an enemy fleet with it. In the wreckage, nothing remained but debris and radiation. 43 human Marines had held a station against 2,000 alien warriors, and they'd taught the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. 6 months after the Battle of Valor Station, Admiral Song Isol stood in the human fleet headquarters on Mars. Before her, a delegation of Kralith officials waited in silence. This meeting would determine whether humanity and the Kralith Empire went to full war or found another path. Admiral Song was 51 years old and had commanded fleets in 4 conflicts. She'd seen war from every angle, but the delegation before her was something new. The Kralith Empire had never sent peace envoys before. They conquered or they were conquered. There was no middle ground, until now. Elder Tralvok stepped forward. He was the same Kralith who'd observed the Battle of Valor Station from the 3rd warship. The one who'd survived to carry the lesson home. Admiral Song, Tralvok said formally, I come bearing a message from the Kralith High Council. We wish to discuss terms of peace between our peoples. Song studied the elder carefully. Peace? Your empire sent 3 warships to take one of our stations. You attacked us without warning. Why would we believe you want peace now? Because Valor Station taught us something, Tralvox replied. It taught us that humanity cannot be conquered. Not because your technology is superior, but because your spirit is unbreakable. He activated a holographic display. Combat footage from Valor Station played in the air. Human Marines fighting impossible odds. Captain Taesung standing alone in the command center. The final explosion that destroyed everything. We lost 1,743 warriors taking that station. Tralvox continued. 43 humans killed over 1,700 of our best soldiers. The ratio should be impossible. But we learned it isn't impossible. It's what happens when you fight humans. Song watched the footage silently. She'd seen it before. Every human in the fleet had seen it. Captain Taesung's last stand had become legendary. Your Captain Taesung said something to War Master Calvex, Tralvox said. He said humans don't surrender. We thought it was bravado. But we've studied your history now. We've learned about your species. You really don't surrender, do you? No, Song said simply. We don't, Tralvox nodded slowly. Then the Kralith Empire has a choice. We can fight a war against humanity that will cost us millions of warriors. Or we can acknowledge that some species are better as allies than enemies. You want an alliance? Song asked, surprised. We want to not be your enemy, Tralvox corrected. We've built our empire on conquest. But Valor Station showed us the cost of conquering humans. The price is too high. We'd rather negotiate. Song considered this. The Kralith were offering something they'd never offered another species. Respect. Not surrender, not tribute, but actual diplomatic respect. I'll need to discuss this with Earth Command, she said, but I think we can find terms that work for both our peoples. On the rebuilt Valor Station, now called Taesung Station in honor of its fallen captain, a memorial stood in the central plaza. 43 names were carved into black stone. Captain Han Taesung's name was at the top, followed by Sergeant Choi Hana, Lieutenant Kang Junho, Corporal Park Mina, Private Namsu, Private Yunde, and 37 others. Young Marines arriving for their first deployment always visited the memorial first. They stood in silence, reading the names, understanding what those names represented. Lieutenant Lee Ara, age 23, touched Captain Tae Sung's name gently. She'd studied the Battle of Valor Station in training. She'd watched the combat footage dozens of times. Now she was stationed on the same ground where those Marines had made their stand. "Do you think we could do what they did?" her friend Private Oh Hyun asked quietly. Ara thought about the question seriously. "I don't know. But if the time came, I'd like to think we'd try." An older Marine, Sergeant Park Ji-ho, overheard them. He'd served with Captain Tae-sung years before, in a different war. "Those Marines weren't special," he said. "They were regular soldiers who did what needed doing. That's the point. Any of us could be them if the situation demanded it." "Is that supposed to be comforting?" Hyun asked. "No," Ji-ho said honestly. "It's supposed to be true. We're human Marines. When the galaxy pushes, we push back. That's what Tae-sung taught us." In the Kralith Empire, the Battle of Valor Station had become required study at their military academies. Young Kralith warriors watched the combat footage and learned about human psychology. The lesson was clear. Humans were dangerous not because of their weapons, but because of their refusal to quit. War Master Kalvex had survived the battle, though barely. His career was destroyed. In the Kralith Empire, losing over 1,700 warriors to 43 enemies was unforgivable. He'd been demoted and reassigned to a training position. Now he taught young warriors about the humans, about how they fought, about what made them dangerous. "They're smaller than us," he told a class of recruits. "Weaker physically. Their technology is comparable to ours, not superior. But they have something we don't. They have the ability to decide that death is acceptable if it accomplishes the mission." A young warrior raised his hand. "Are you saying they're not afraid of death?" "No," Kalvex corrected. "They're very afraid. I saw fear in their eyes. But they fought anyway. That's what makes them dangerous. Fear doesn't stop them. Logic doesn't stop them. Nothing stops them except death." He pulled up footage of Captain Tae-sung's last stand. The class watched in silence as the human captain fought alone against dozens of warriors, wounded and bleeding, refusing to fall. This human was their commander. Kalvex said. He knew he was going to die. He knew his entire garrison was going to die. But he fought anyway because that's what humans do. Remember this lesson. The Kralith Empire will never fight humanity again if we can avoid it. On Earth in the Marine Corps Training Center, Private Kang Sora completed her final exercise. She'd scored in the top 5% of her class. Her instructors were impressed. She was being recommended for officer training. During her graduation ceremony, an older officer gave a speech. It was Admiral Song herself come to address the new Marines. "You're graduating on the 6-month anniversary of the Battle of Valor Station," Song said. "Some of you will be assigned to Tae-sung Station. All of you will carry forward the legacy of what happened there." She paused, looking at each graduate. Captain Tae-sung and his Marines taught the galaxy something important. They taught them that humans don't quit, not when things are hard, not when the odds are impossible, not when death is certain. We fight because fighting is what we do. The graduates listened in silence. "You'll face challenges in your careers," Song continued. "You'll face enemies who are bigger, stronger, better equipped. When that happens, remember Valor Station. Remember that 43 Marines held off 2,000 warriors. Remember that being human means never accepting defeat." She stepped back and saluted the graduates. They saluted back, understanding the weight of what she'd told them. Across the galaxy, other species had heard the story of Valor Station. The tale spread through trading posts, diplomatic channels, and military networks. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy in the clearest way possible. We don't surrender. Some species saw this as admirable. Others saw it as terrifying. But all of them understood the message. Humans were a species to be taken seriously. In her private quarters on Tae-sung Station, Lieutenant Lee Ara studied Captain Tae-sung's personal logs. They'd been recovered from the wreckage and made available to Marines serving on the station. She read his final entry written just hours before the reactor overload. "We're going to die here," Tae-sung had written. "All of us. But that's okay. We're not dying in vain. We're teaching the galaxy what it means to fight humans. Every species out there will hear about Valor Station. They'll know that humans can't be conquered. Because we refuse to be conquered. That's our legacy. That's what we're leaving behind. Era closed the log file and looked out the window. Space stretched infinitely in all directions. Somewhere out there, species were making decisions about humanity. Would they be friends or enemies? Would they trade or fight? Whatever they decided, they'd do it knowing what happened when you underestimated humans. The Memorial Plaza was quiet tonight. Ara walked down to stand before the black stone monument. 43 names. 43 Marines who'd changed the course of galactic history. We'll make you proud, she said quietly to the names. We'll carry forward what you started. Above her, ships came and went from Taesung Station. Human ships carrying Marines to posts throughout the galaxy. Each of those Marines knew the story. Each of them understood the legacy. The Battle of Valor Station was over, but its lesson would echo through the galaxy for generations. Humanity had announced itself with fire and sacrifice, and the message was clear. We don't surrender. Not to superior numbers, not to better weapons, not to impossible odds, because surrender isn't something humans do. We fight, we endure. We refuse to quit. Captain Han Tae-sung had asked the Kralith Warmaster a simple question. Surrender to who? The galaxy now understood what that question meant. It meant humanity would never bow to any power. It meant that fighting humans came with a cost no empire could afford to pay repeatedly. It meant that 43 Marines, standing alone against an army, had taught the entire galaxy to respect humanity. And in the end, that was worth any price.